Thank you, Mr. President. I know we have pending on the appropriations bill right now for commerce, justice, and science, an important issue that I have offered an amendment to this appropriations bill, along with Senator Chambliss, who is the ranking Republican on the Intel Committee, Senators Wicker, Inhofe, Cruz, Graham, and Blunt, who all serve on the Armed Services Committee, and Senator Vitter and Senator Kirk. Our amendment would prohibit the administration from transferring to or releasing to the custody or control of any foreign country Guantanamo detainees who our own Guantanamo Review Task Force have recommended for continued law of war detention. Now, this is a task force that looks at all the circumstances of those who are being held at Guantanamo and looks at whether they continue to represent a danger to our country and to our allies if they were to be released. And so our amendment does three things. It prohibits the transfer to foreign countries of these detainees that this group, that is the administration, has put together to review each of the detainees and their status at Guantanamo, has recommended them for continued law of war detention. Mr. President, these are the worst of the worst. These individuals have been determined to be the most dangerous, to continue to present a risk to the United States of America and to our allies if they were to be released. And so our amendment is pretty straightforward. It simply says that they cannot be transferred to third-party countries or transferred to the United States of America, for that matter, that they shall remain at Guantanamo Bay in that secure detention facility there, based on the recommendation of the Guantanamo Review Task Force. Our amendment would also prevent the transfer of Guantanamo detainees to countries that have had prior instances of Guantanamo detainees being transferred to that country, and then those detainees getting back in the fight against us. Pretty common sense. If we have a history with a country where we've previously, under either the Bush administration or the Obama administration, transferred the detainees there and that they've been released and have gotten back in the fight against us or our allies, why would we want to transfer to this type of country again? Because obviously these countries cannot guarantee the security of these detainees, and it puts us and our allies at risk. Finally, our amendment would prohibit the transfer of Guantanamo detainees to countries who have failed to honor their previous commitments to the United States of America to monitor, detain, or control the travel of former Guantanamo detainees. Again, if we've had a prior agreement with a country and we've transferred a detainee or a detainees there, and they have failed to honor those agreements, why would we want to transfer detainees there now? Now, the most recent instance of this was the 5 Taliban Dream Team that were transferred to Qatar, because the country of Qatar actually had a prior instance where they failed to honor their commitments to us with regard to how they would treat the detention and travel restrictions on a Guantanamo detainee. I'm deeply concerned about the national security implications of the 5 detainees that were transferred in the prisoner swap. And in fact, having asked our intelligence officials about what will happen to these 5 detainees, what I've heard from them is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 4 out of 5 of those detainees are a 10 for 10 on likelihood to get back in the battle against us or our allies. The fifth is about an 8 on 10 scale. We have a 29% re-engagement rate or recidivism rate from those we have held at Guantanamo, meaning 29% of them get back in the fight against our country, against us, against our interests, after they've been captured from and put in Guantanamo. So we have a history here that it's important, if the administration is going to transfer anyone out of Guantanamo, that they not transfer individuals who have been found too dangerous to be let loose because they've been designated for continued law of war detention and they present too much of a risk to our country and the world. Second, to not transfer these individuals to countries where we've already transferred people in the past, and guess what? They couldn't keep them secure and they got back in the fight against us and our allies. Third, to prohibit transfer to countries who have not honored prior commitments when we've transferred a Gitmo detainee here. And that would apply to the country that the president most recently released, the 5 Taliban Dream Team, which unfortunately are going to get back in the fight. And that 29% are those who have re-engaged in the fight or are suspected of re-engaging in the fight against us. So our amendment is pretty straightforward. It is focused on making sure that the terrorists that are held at Guantanamo, the most dangerous of those individuals who present a threat to our country, are not put in a position where they can get back in the fight against us, against our allies. And you have to think about the men and women in uniform who have put their lives on the line to capture these individuals in some instances, and really to honor our commitment to them to make sure that we can hold the country safe and secure, to not allow those who have been deemed the most dangerous at Guantanamo for continued law of war detention to just transfer them to a third-party country, or not allow us to transfer them to countries where we already have a history of either detainees getting back in the fight from that country or the country not honoring its commitment to the United States of America. Now, my prior job was as a prosecutor, and I will tell you, it's just a matter of common sense. This is a matter of protecting the American people from dangerous, captured terrorists that we already have in our custody, to make sure we're not putting them back in a position where they can harm us again. I think that's something that America would expect of us. That's what I believe our amendment would do. And Mr. President, I hope that as we take this appropriations bill up, that this amendment will be considered so that we can pass it to ensure that dangerous Guantanamo detainees are not put in a position again where they can harm us, our people, or our allies, because too many of them, unfortunately, have already committed acts against our country, our people, and our allies. And shame on us if we don't do everything we can to prevent that from happening again. Thank you, Mr. President.